Today on the Idiot's Guide, we are talking about from start to license. We break down business licenses, the legal path to profits. And if you're looking to cross the Atlantic Ocean, vehicle is very, very important. Hint, a hamster wheel will get you barred from the ocean. Just so you know. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, a.k.a. The Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody, or our listener, or maybe two. We'll see. I mean, I'm checking some of the stats. I mean, it looks like there's at least two. So
there you go.
You know, that's a positive note. It might just be you and I, but you know, like, I don't know. The good news is that we have a listener, at least, you know, in that sense. I'm my own biggest fan. Look, Ma. Today, what we're going to really kind of tackle is something that I have done my best to avoid and probably shouldn't be. It's an everyday thing. Everywhere you go, all the things that you interact with, if it has a name outside the building and it's in a building, or it's not even in a building, it's just a name that you go out there and check out, and it's like, oh yeah, you follow such and such and you buy this product from this place and this place. All of that requires some kind of business licensing or permit or whatever you want to call it in order to conduct that kind of business. If you're in business, you have a business idea, the safest bet, I'm going to assume, is a business license. Yep. And I say that preaching entirely at myself because for any number of years, I've had ideas, businesses, things that I've done for over and over and over and have consistently avoided it. Done, you know, some DBA stuff so that I can try to see what I could write off in my taxes. But honestly, even that's shooting myself in the foot because it's not really beneficial for me because it hasn't been. So now we're having this conversation because there is an actual pursuit to legitimize myself in certain capacities, and so this episode is way for me, and hopefully it's for you guys too. So Joe, scold me. Tell me how bad I have been.
So what a lot of people don't realize is there are a lot of administrative tasks that go along with starting a business. I was talking to a client. So just so everyone knows, we talk about a lot of different things here. My main job is as an accountant doing business and financial consulting. So this is actually what I do for a living. The neuro research, the other activities that I do, the scientific research, that's all I do that on my side. That's a hobby. Mm-hmm. But the main job I do is business and financial consulting. But I had a client just last week, and she's going through just a human resources audit, and she's learning so much about what she doesn't have as part of this. So human resources audits, for those that don't know, are they just come in and look and make sure that all of your employees are employees and that all of your contractors are contractors and that they're not mixed. So you don't have contractors as employees and not paying the appropriate stuff. It's a big hot thing right now with states to verify that stuff. But so she has to provide all this information, and she is realizing just how much she doesn't have. So she's like, why doesn't anyone ever put out a 10 things you need to know about being a business owner list? So I told her I would do that.
Stay tuned.
But this is one of the first ones that she and I actually talked about.
Yeah, guys, this is content. We're going one at a time, just so you know. That's 10 episodes. That's good production.
Now, and this was done completely outside of Adam needing any of this. This is how much it comes up. But you know, what do you need? What documentation do you need? because there's federal information that you need to do, there's state level information that you need to do, and there is local information that you need to do. That could be county, that could be city, that could be any number of levels within the government that you have to make sure you have your licensing in place. And so when you even think about starting a business, you have to do something in order to make that business real. Now, what Adam was saying, doing a DBA, that's just using your social security number as the business ID number. So most people are familiar with what an EIN is. It's an employer ID number. You get that from the IRS. If you don't want to go through that process, you just use your own social security number, run it yourself, and you just use a DBA, doing business as, for the company name.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter what, you still need some kind of identifier, whether it's a business or an EIN, or if it's just your social security number, you still need something identifying that income.
Yeah.
Anytime you're dealing with money, you need, the government's going to get involved. Whether you want it to or not, they're going to get involved. And I mean, in past podcasts, we've talked about the importance of what taxes are meant to be used for, the importance of taxes. So as much as everyone hates the IRS and doesn't like to pay their taxes, they do go to necessary things.
I mean, necessary is loose. Like,
well, I mean, if we're talking about, spending on military and spending on military benefits,
true. Yes.
Those are
necessary.
Definitely
in my world,
necessaries.
very necessary.
And so remember, paying your taxes, if you are, contact your legislator, but make sure that the spending that you're paying in your taxes is going to those veterans.
Yeah.
But that's what your taxes should be used for. So when we talk about taxes, they are necessary, kind of a necessary evil, as good old GW said.
Kind of like chores. You don't like doing them. They just have to be done.
Yeah.
And
in order to keep track of that, that's where we need all this licensing.
Okay.
And so that's why it's all there. It's because taxes need to pay for things. So we normally think about the federal level, that we need taxes on the federal side. We pay our federal income tax. We also understand the state income tax. Okay. And so you can do the same thing. You have a DBA, you have your income coming in on your personal. And that goes to pay the state side of things. State covers, depending on what your state is, a lot of additional stuff where the federal government doesn't come in. So we've got Medicare and Medicaid. Mm-hmm. We've got foster programs where your taxes help to pay on a state level those foster programs. There are a lot of things on a state level that your taxes pay for. And again, in order for that to be tracked, they've got to have some number. And so we're used to that federal, that state, but there are also local city things that happen.
Kind of a rabbit trail offshoot real fast. I learned this because I was in a big huff and puff at the liquor store. And like everybody complains because in our state, they have state liquor stores and there's no windows and don't look inside kind of stuff. There's a veil there. Anyway, so
don't want to corrupt the youths.
No, but there's an extra taxed amount. It's a much higher tax amount when you go for that. So the sales tax that you're paying is ridiculous. However, what I learned is that tax directly from that division in the government that runs the liquor stores pays for the education programs in our schools all across the state. And I'm like, well, then I got to buy more booze.
That is probably the best justification I have ever heard for someone drinking.
Why are you an alcoholic? Because I care.
Wow,
I believe the children are our future. Sorry. Anyway, go.
All right.
Let's get back on track.
So going to the local side of it, one thing that's happened recently, as much as I really hate it, my neighborhood recently had the roads redone. So they just put a new layer of the black asphalt to help it last longer and things like that. Snow removal is a lot of times a local city thing for city streets. So designation between state and city maintenance streets.
Yeah.
And so that's what these licensing fees are paying for. Now, the state covers a lot of the city stuff, so the state will give money to cities out of the funds that they get. But a lot of it is subsidized by actual city business licensing. And so, again, whether you like it or not, I'm not making an opinion on whether taxes are good or not. This is what the taxes are there for, and this is why these licenses, this is why these registrations are required.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so it's important that they get done. And it's a matter of if you don't, you could get into trouble. But also, a lot of people don't realize that they even need to be done. Every state is different. Every local jurisdiction is different. One of my favorites is Louisiana. So Louisiana doesn't even have counties. They have parishes.
It's true. Yeah.
And so when you are, yeah. And so when you're anywhere else in the US, you're talking about counties. In Louisiana, there are no counties. There are parishes. Now, they function just the same as counties for the most part, but they're slightly different. And so everywhere is just a little different. Some places you don't need local business licensing. Other places you do. Here where we live, you do need local business licensing. In Washington State, they have what's called a business and occupation tax. And so what that is you are paying that local excise tax in your specific jurisdiction. So you have the state level of business tax, and then you have the local level of business tax. And so you're paying it. So I have a client in Washington State. I have to file, they only do it quarterly on those taxes, but I have to file 4 different tax returns quarterly to 4 different cities, plus the state. Now, it doesn't have an income tax. These are quote unquote, well, I mean, it doesn't have a sales tax. Washington's a little weird.
I think Oregon's the same way. They don't.
Sorry, Washington has a sales tax. Oregon doesn't have the sales tax.
Yeah.
But Washington, this is that sales tax, kind of. There's a separate sales tax that goes along with this.
Moral of that story, the government will get their money.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to, as a prospective business owner, understand what those things are required. And it can be difficult to understand it. You could go get a lawyer and pay $200 an hour to go get this done.
I was like, if you could find a $200 lawyer, that'd be fantastic.
$200 an hour for a cheap lawyer.
Yeah.
But there are lawyers that specialize with these. There are companies like LegalZoom.
Okay.
LegalZoom, actually, we don't have any affiliation with them. I generally like LegalZoom. If you don't want to do this on your own, I recommend to my clients that if you really don't want to do this on your own, just go to LegalZoom. They actually do have, as of the last time I checked, was a couple of weeks ago, a free business startup program. And so you go on, they will create the business for you for free. It's the very basic. It's just the federal, or I think it's just the state level for the articles and everything that you need. They don't get the EIN at that level. Getting an EIN isn't too difficult. We'll talk about that in a bit. But and then you can go up the next level. I think it's like $100, and they'll do the EIN for you, and then you can bump up to the next level. That's like $200, and they'll actually have a quote unquote lawyer help you. I don't know what that actually entails, but that is what that is. So again, no affiliation with LegalZoom. I just personally do like them as compared to all of the other sites out there.
Yeah.
When it comes to entity creation. So you could go that route and have another company do it for you, do some of those extra things, but realistically, if you want to save the money, if you're just doing this as a DBA and you're just doing it yourself, it's easier just to do it yourself. Most of these things can be done online. And it's funny. So I was showing Adam how to get an online business license for the city that we do business in. He lives in a different city, and so his business license is going to be out of his home. And so when he was going to that city, he couldn't find anywhere where you
It
could
was
do it
telling me
online.
to call or email. That was like literally looked at the line, clicked on the email link to send an email to the city. And I was like, this is the only way that I can get this. And then, yeah.
So he came in this morning after doing his research and said, "Oh, this city I can only get it through an email or through letter." I'm like, "Hold on." So I quickly go to that website. Now again, this is what I do for a living. I go to that website. It's right there on the website. Apply online for a business license for either
Pretty sure,
home based or commercial based.
pretty sure Joe said 10 words like in one sentence and he was already there. Like totally schooled me in what I knew or what I had discovered. And I was like, man, this is so frustrating. And he's just like, no, it's right here. You can do it just right now. You want to do it? So
Yeah. And so that's the thing. You're going to try to Google this, but remember, Google, like we've talked about the AI stuff before, all Google does is it's going to pull in what it thinks is the best result, not what is the actual result. It's just going to pull in what it thinks is best. And it could be completely wrong. And so the best advice I can give you if you're looking to start a business is go directly to your city's website. Don't Google. Don't do anything other than go to your city's website. Every city has one. Some are better than others. But go to the city's website and figure it out. Now, the reason I know every city has one, because I love a TV show called Corner Gas. Okay? It's a Canadian TV show. And it is about this little tiny town in Canada, in Saskatchewan.
is it still it's still running or is it like an old show?
Kind of.
Okay.
So it was running for quite a few years. They did a movie after it went off air, and then they redid it just recently in animated form. And so I think it went for 4 or 5 seasons in animated. The final episode has Ryan Reynolds doing a cameo. So, that
I mean, if he's that makes it.
it's big time.
Yeah.
It's big time.
It's practically Hollywood.
Yeah. But so Dog River is the name of this town. It's a comedy. It's making fun of small town Canada. But the city of Dog River, there is a real world equivalent to it. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But that city has its own website. That the population of that city is maybe a couple of hundred. It has its own website. Not the greatest in the world. They don't have all the money to hire, web designers, but it has its own website to be able to look this information up. Every city has a website. And so go to that website and figure out if you need a business license. So going back to this Washington example, so Washington State, they are in 5 different cities. One of the cities that they're in doesn't require the city B&O tax. The other 4 cities do, but the 5th one doesn't. And so understanding even within a state like Washington State, where the majority of the cities do require taxation and licensing, not all of them do. And so it's important to look at your specific location to see if you need a business license. Because again, not all of them require it, but you'll want to double check and make sure.
That sounds dizzying, like to have that many directions to go to. But you're right. I mean, that's doing your diligence and typing. If I have a location, a business location that's there, I mean, it's going to say like even if you go into like the online world and you're mostly, well, even if you're just strictly an online business, if you let's say sell a product and you have a business license because you have a business and you live in a certain city and your product sells in that city, you have to pay the sales tax to that city because of the fact that that's, like it's a whole other gambit of problems and things, but it's just, yeah. So
yeah, it can get really, really daunting to go through all this process. Going back to the Louisiana idea here is when you're looking at filing your sales tax, you have to file in every single jurisdiction. And so similar to like Washington, where you're filing this B&O tax for each city, in Louisiana, you are filing it in each county. And so you've got all of these different things where every state's just going to be a little bit different. In Texas, love Texas. Oh, no. Yeah, Texas and Georgia both have this, where when you file, you have to put what jurisdictions you sold into. And so I have a client who sells in Georgia. They're e-commerce, so they sell to every state, but they have to file in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I have to go through every month, and it's usually a list of about 50 jurisdictions that I have to go through, and I mark every single one of them with the, $15 of sales to that jurisdiction for that month. And so you've got to look at what is required with each of these. Now, again, we're talking about, is there a local city license? Is there a local tax? What's the state requirement? What's the federal requirement? Federal's easy because it's just an EIN. States, when you register with the state, you need to register both with the Secretary of State. That's to say, I'm a business. And then you've got the Department of Revenue to be able to say, here's your money. It's not the same organization. You would think that it would be easy enough if you're registering with the Secretary of State, that it would be automatic that you're registering with the Department of Revenue and saying, I'm a business here. I'm telling you I'm making money. And the state says, great, thank you. Now go to someone else and tell them the same thing.
So I guess one of my biggest things that I would be hesitant on as the beginnings of a business is getting nickel and dimed to death, and I haven't made a dime, kind of a thing. Oh yeah. And you're like, geez, in order for me to tell you that I'm operating a business, you want money. Yep. And I was like, wait a sec. I'm just telling you so that I can operate this business, and you want money for that. And then you want money for that, and you want money. And I have to have all of these T's and I's crossed and dotted in order for me to just make money.
Yeah. And again, every state's going to be different. So I've done some of these recently, or helped clients with these recently. Some states, it's $100 to register. Here in our state, they just changed the rates depending on the type of business that you have. If you've got a corporation, if you've got an LLC, if you've got a partnership, each one of them has a different form. Each one of them has a different fee. But I think it's $30 to register at the state level with the Secretary of State. Now, our state is great, and there are a lot more states coming on board where they have a one-stop site. So you register once, and it does actually register you with every division within the state. So Department of Revenue, all the different things that you might need based on what your business is doing. And so that's great. The one-stops are so good now. They weren't always there. One stop here in our state is, I want to say it's 8 or 10 years old. Georgia just recently started a one-stop site. Kentucky recently started a one-stop site. So some of these things, it's great because they've got a one source. But you may think, okay, I'm in Kentucky. I'm doing a one-stop business registration for the state. Well, that must register me for local. No, it doesn't. It is not really a one-stop. That's just for the state level. And so you're going to pay your fee. And then you go and get your local registration. I think for our city, it's $50. Mm-hmm. Another city that I had another business in, it was $100 plus $10 per employee that you have. It really ranges. And this, you get the business license before you're even producing anything. So you have to have a couple $100 ready before you even start the business. Plus, if then you want to go and have a lawyer help you or have a website help you, it's another couple of $100. And so it really does get very confusing and very hard for business owners or for people who want to be business owners, start these things up. And this is why a lot of times they don't do it. They just bypass it and maybe later they'll get it done just because they don't have the cash for it.
Stop talking about me.
Well, and the other thing that happens is sometimes you know about it, but then you start going down the road and it's like, man, this is just way too hard, too difficult. I don't understand what it's asking because they ask the weirdest questions. The answers are very simple, but the questions are very difficult.
I think that's a big part of it. When you said like, okay, you have S corp, C corp, LLC, whatever it is, like if it depending on what you do and then your articles of incorporation and all, you're like it is dizzying when you're just like, the reality is I'm going to say this. I'm looking at something for me to legitimize a business license for myself to teach music. That is it. So an individual, no employees, moi, and I've got to do like 18 steps just to get a stupid license. And I'm like, it's not worth my time.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people think until 2 years from now, when you've got local government coming knocking at your door saying, why haven't you registered?
Yeah.
And then you're in trouble. And so that's where you want to make sure you're doing all this right from the beginning so you don't have problems with it later. Now, most local governments are completely understanding and know that business owners don't really know how to get things started. And so they'll help you. It's pretty straightforward.
Do you think that some of that stuff is intentional to be discouraging for people to just on a whim try to open a business and like, this whole entrepreneurial life of, the land of opportunity that we live in is full of litigation. You're like,
no, I don't think it has anything to do with that. Because honestly, cities want that money.
Yeah.
Governments want that money. They want you doing business because that means revenue for them. I think the biggest reason why they go through all these steps is to make it confusing for bots, so that you can't just have bots creating it. You have to actually have a live person doing this.
Yeah.
And to money laundering.
Okay.
So if you have to go through a 10-day process to open a business, unless you're, really going through the steps, it's going to be much harder if you're just doing it to money launder. And so it's really there to help prevent or highlight people that are just out there money laundering. But it does get confusing. This isn't the exact phrase of the question, but there are a lot of questions that say, what's the nature of the product that you intend to sell to consumers? That's a very confusing question because it's kind of going back and forth. What's the nature of the product you intend to sell to consumers? Now, they got a lot more confusing than that when all they could ask was, what are you selling?
Right.
But they make these very long questions over something that's very simple to answer. So that's why I say the answers are easy. The questions are hard. They make them word problems. And that's
a good description for like any form you got to fill out from the government. Yeah.
And the reason they do that now, again, I'm not necessarily defending them on these factors, but there is reason for it. The reason that they do it is they need to cover every basis. And so when you're talking about lawyers, they're going to go through every step of every document to make sure that every possible contingency is covered.
Okay.
And so it's the rules of ambiguity. So in law, if there's ambiguity in a contract, then it falls generally to the benefit of the person who did not write the contract. So if there's legitimate ambiguity where it wasn't explicitly explained or even inherently explained in the contract, whoever wrote the contract should have known that, and whoever signed the contract gets the benefit of that ambiguity. Okay. And so if it goes to court or anything like that. And so when it comes to any of these government forms, they're going to get lawyers just going all over this, looking for all the potentials. And so because of that, it's going to be lawyer or legalese. So yeah, they're just looking to cover all of their bases, which makes it very, very confusing.
I have a list in front of me that just what you said reminded me of this. And this isn't even like, definitive at this point. This is just kind of like, hey, this takes an extra special amount of care and attention if you're in these categories, according to our state of Utah. In your state, you're probably going to find a similar thing on your website, but this is actually a recommendation from LegalZoom. So, not to shout out, we're not sponsored, but hey, LegalZoom, if you want to, that's fine. We're okay with it.
I do like you, LegalZoom.
Choosing a business activity below to learn how to apply. Each one of these has a little bit of an adjusted way of application, but agriculture, alcoholic beverages, aviation, firearms, ammunition, and explosives. Ooh, that'd be fun. Fish and wildlife, commercial fisheries, maritime transportation. We don't have very much of that in Utah.
There's the Great Salt Lake.
It's not maritime.
Technically, it is.
You're right. It's one of the greats.
Those dinner boats that they have out there.
They
I don't know who would want to do that, but they've got them.
Nuclear energy, radio and television broadcasting, transportation and logistics. So that doesn't even cover half of what you would look at, but like zoning requirements for having a business or what you're conducting inside of a specific space, all of those things come into play.
Well, another hard thing is people may not be familiar with a term called NAICS. That's I can't remember what the acronym stands for. I looked at it just the other day, but it's just NAICS, and it's different codes for different businesses. Well, they don't keep up with modern technology. There is still not an NAICS code for podcasts. And so if you're registering and on your tax returns, you have to put that NAICS code. I think it's called a business activity code on the tax returns. You have to put in that code. And so what do? And up until recently, there was no code for e-commerce online sales. There still kind of isn't. It's kind of just been slightly modified to include those businesses. But there's no specific code for podcasts or for anything like podcasts. And so how do you set up that business? Well, the reality is you just pick something close and hope that you got it close enough. And that just adds that other level of complexity to all of this. So what it really comes down to is if you can do it yourself, take time, make sure you've got some calm music playing in the background, get into a meditative state, send everyone away so that you can actually concentrate, and then make sure that you have whatever beverage you choose to calm down with at the end of a frustrating day available when you're done doing all this.
If you get it from the liquor store, though, it goes to the children. Don't forget about that.
That's right.
I have a couple of things here that I really actually liked. This is mostly specific to Utah, but in general, I feel like it answers the question about pretty much anywhere you're operating in business. And who needs a business license? I'm going to say it that way. It's phrased, who needs a Utah business license? But everybody that sells products or services subject to the state sales tax needs a seller's permit or a business license. Businesses in certain professions or locations may also need specific licenses and permits, like the list that I went through a minute ago. let's see here. There's the other one. Like, what licenses do I need in order to open a business? I mean, like, that's, guys, this isn't the end of the road here. Like, if you're looking at like a brick and mortar location in order to get something where you're providing a service out the door, there is an option here in Utah. I've seen this one where you can get a home. It's like if it, like what we're talking about for mine is I'm going to function and operate my business name and license from my own home. And so I just have to show that it's not like a storefront. It's a business. I'm even allowed to put a sign out front as long as it's not intrusive and glowing in the middle of the night. And but it's some kind of like home or at home homebound business owner kind of a thing. And then the other one's called a seller's permit. That's kind of like a diet business license that I've seen now. Basically, it just allows you to sell products or services. So
a seller's permit is the same as a sales tax license
okay.
or a sales tax permit or a reseller permit.
So I
would any other name from other cities and states.
What I would see is to say, okay, well, if I'm getting that, does that mean that I don't need a EIN number for Fed or, because a seller's permit, you can have a seller's permit up to like 5 employees, and then you have to look at a different license for it. So it's confusing. Like we've already covered. There's not a clear answer, and I was lost trying to get to even going from what are state websites to state websites to city websites to state websites to county web, like just lost. And at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? Honestly, I'm that guy that just says, I feel like DBA is so much easier. That's why I have gone back to it year after year. But all in all, like if I want to get serious and buckle down and actually start doing something with my own business, I have to do something like this because that's the responsible thing.
Well, and to be honest, even with a DBA, you still have to do all this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so it's so difficult for people that they just ignore it. And my recommendation is don't ignore it just because it's too hard. Find someone that can help you. So
I think LegalZoom's a good approach. That one's really helpful, at least from the state level. I don't know about the Fed, but I think the federal EIN is, if they'll, you just said, yeah, okay. So honestly, like if you can get something that your state, you live in a state that has the one stop and that, those are great options that you're still going to have to pay for the licensing and take care of that. But at the end of the day, it's not just going to, you have somebody helping hold your hand through it.
Yeah. And I also recommend find a good accountant. An accountant can help you with a lot of this stuff, can guide you, can consult you on a lot of this stuff. Now, some jurisdictions, accountants don't have the authority or rights to do any of this because lawyers have written the laws so that they're the only ones that can. But they can still at least consult and guide and help you understand what it is that you need to do, even if they aren't the ones that are doing it themselves. And so there are a lot of accountants out there who are willing to help, willing to guide, because it deals with money, and that's what accountants do. Mm-hmm. And having a good accountant, accountants are way cheaper than lawyers. And you find a good accountant that will consult with you on these things, then you're off in a much better position. So if you can find one of those, you're doing great.
All in all, I think, it's wise if you are asking somebody that works in a field related to it. I think that's going to be the ultimate benefit out of this, that, you don't have to try to figure this out all on your own. Most anybody that's out there is really passionate about their business and about what they do, but it has nothing to do with these licenses. And unfortunately, these are essential in everything that we do. So it's kind of, you just have to bite the bullet and get it done, Yeah. So, what about hobbies? I'm curious about this because if I had, I think the direction I'm headed from as far as teaching and teaching music and what I'm talking about is, from a hobby that I've been a musician for, wow, almost 30 years. I think 30, well, this year will be 30 years. So that's a long time. I'm old.
Yeah.
And I I want to take it to a different level in the fact that I can teach, and so that's kind of where I'm going with it. However, it's just a hobby. It's something I love doing, and maybe like I'll let you answer this, but I'm gonna try to transition this into a different
Mm-hmm.
hobby. But 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 let's say, for example, I'm producing what I produce, and it's not something that I'm specifically trying to have a vendor station for, or it's not I'm not selling T-shirts, but I might teach a lesson here and there. Do you think that those opportunities that come my way, few and far between at this moment, are things that I should be pursuing that license for if I'm just still in that hobby phase?
No. So if it's just a hobby, then there's not the requirement. So, and when it turns from hobby to regular income, that's a whole weird conundrum. But
I've heard there's like a dollar figure.
there's
Like,
not.
there's not.
There's
Okay.
not a dollar figure. It's most states, even for like sales tax, have an incidental sales exclusion. So if you're in the business of selling cars, you have to charge sales tax and remit that sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that you also sell that, a car came in, a used car, it had some stuff in the back of it, a shovel and a tarp. Okay. You might question why that car came in with a shovel and a tarp in the back. But
I would definitely.
let's say you have a shovel and a tarp in the back of that truck that came in.
I would get a refund. Yeah, just
Yeah.
right away.
So you sell the truck, you pay the sales tax. Well, if you sell that shovel and tarp, those are not vehicles. And so because those don't cover under the same business of what your business does, same activity, which is sell cars, you don't actually have to charge sales tax on that tarp and shovel because it's an incidental sale. It's not related to your business. You just sold it because you had it. And so you don't have to charge sales tax on that.
Okay.
And so it kind of falls into the same avenue with hobbies where these are just incidental things. You don't have to do that. Now, this is why you opened up a can of worms by asking me this.
No.
This is why there was a lot of uproar this last tax year with the change for companies like Venmo and
Okay.
Zelle and the other companies that are money transfer companies, where any money transfer over $600, whether it's a business or not, now has to be reported. And so if it's being reported to the IRS, you sell, let's say you as an individual have an extra shovel and tarp from some extracurricular activities that you've done.
Just happens to be a solid gold shovel.
Right. And you find some gullible person, you sell it for $650. Well, now the government has that $650 is reported as income to you, but it's an incidental sale. It doesn't have anything to do with any regular income. You just sold it because you had you don't need the shovel and tarp because you already, because you just have it. And so now the government's going to come in and potentially tax you on that $650. Now, if anyone can tell, I'm not really a fan of this new, change in law of requiring individuals over 600. Again, I do understand the reason because businesses are trying to run it through the friends and family sales as opposed to business sales on Venmo, so they can avoid paying tax on it and this and that. I can see the reason, but it's a bit too much because we all have incidental sales. We have hobbies. We all do little things. Doesn't mean it's actually income.
Yeah.
And so that's where, no, you don't have to report hobby income, but you do have to, you kind of do have to report hobby income if it gets too big, but it's you also want to report the expenses that go along with it.
Well, what do you think? Like, if you said over 600, but if it's like cumulative, so if I do a lesson and it's totaling over $50 a month that I'm making off of this. Cumulative, that's $600 in that year, and through a service. Is it going to track that, or is it individually? I see this.
It will track it to you individually, your account with Venmo or whoever.
So the moment I make over $600, it's like, you got to start reporting this.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's where a lot of times hobbies don't require any kind of reporting because it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
But now some of these new things are going to potentially require reporting that hobby income. It's getting really complicated when it comes to hobbies. And so I really don't have a good answer. Yes and no and maybe so.
Well, I mean, let's talk about a specific hobby. Okay.
All right.
And this hobby actually, I think, is kind of relentless and very expensive. Okay. And we'll elaborate, but it has to do with a hamster wheel. And you'd think that, the first time you've attempted to use this hamster wheel to go anywhere, which is weird, you say hamster wheel because it's for a hamster, not for a human. But this is
humans got to get exercise too. I mean, we're locked up in cages.
This is I love this picture. I'm going to actually probably link this in the video. The picture is of a hamster wheel with probably 2 to 3 dozen buoys attached to the outside of it so that it will stay afloat in the water. And this individual, his name is Reza Baluchi. He is he's originally actually from Iran, and he came here years and years ago. And this is a hobby. I mean, I can't call it anything else but this. But the most recent one was probably the scariest because, at the end, I'm going to ruin the story for you. They destroyed his hobby. So this individual, this time, was trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean to get to England. That was his goal. Made it 70 miles out off the coast of Florida, and somewhere in between there, the Coast Guard intercepts him after those 70 miles. So technically it's like 4,000 miles away. England is from there. So that's a little more, that's almost 2% of the way. That's progress.
Yeah.
In a buoy hamster wheel, So
hey, you gotta have hobbies. You gotta keep yourself
some people have passions.
Entertained.
So the problem is when they came to intercept him, they went out and tried to get him to get out of his hamster wheel, and he threatened to hurt himself with a knife that he had, and he's flailing it around. And so they're like, okay, so they leave him out there again. He's for another day. He's out there in this buoy hamster wheel. And then they go out the next day and he has 2 knives and says he's going to blow himself up. And they're like, okay, I don't know where the explosive, I don't know. There's not a lot of storage in a hamster wheel. I don't know if there's you're working on human energy stuff, and they managed to, the second day, give him food, but he wouldn't get out of the hamster wheel. He refused and said he would blow himself up. So at least they're feeding this guy. That's nice of them. So continuing this conversation into the next day where they go out and eventually convince him that, hey, you're probably, if we're bringing you food, about 2,000 miles in, there's nobody bringing you food. So maybe some common sense happened right there because he got out and he got in the boat. That resulted in him on a $250,000 bond on him. Mm-hmm. So, and also he is barred from entering the Atlantic Ocean. He can't, I don't even know if he can go to the beach. Right now, he is not allowed to enter it. If he gets on a wave, or the little boogie boards or whatever it is, I'll bet he'll get arrested. I would hate to be that person. Man, I got arrested again. Why? Because I was on a boogie board at the beach.
You never know. I mean, he tried it with the hamster wheel. He could try to get across the Atlantic Ocean on a boogie board.
So a few years back, he tried to go around the what is it, the triangle, the Bermuda Triangle. He tried to go around that, like the whole thing. And the problem is like he keeps doing this during hurricane season. So there's something's missing there. A couple short, short a couple crayons from the.
He's an adrenaline junkie. He likes the rush.
Well, basically determined he was conducting a manifestly unsafe voyage. I love that they used a voyage and hamster wheel buoy thingy in the same description. But so yeah, I mentioned he was on a very, very large, bond that he was stuck with. But I mean, he did this similar homemade vessels, 2014, 2016, 2021. So this is normal. And I'm pretty sure the Coast Guard's like, no, they're on first name basis with everybody. Like, come on, Bob. Like get your act together here. Come on. One of the situations I'm gonna skip all the way to the end of this, but I'm reading an article. And it's really entertaining. I will link the article because it is that entertaining. This is from NPR. But at the very end, it talks about they shot, and he says, the guy goes, they shot and they sink my bubble. That's anyway, no more bubble I have. With it sank all of his supplies. What the problem is when they did this, like it cost, with the Coast Guard's response, it was $144,000 that it cost taxpayers, all these business license holders that pay taxes, cost $144,000 for the one response. So this guy's hobby isn't expensive for him. It's expensive for all of us because we keep having to get our national coast protection out there to get some dude out of a floating hamster wheel. Somebody needs to make sure that hamster wheel doesn't float anymore, but make sure that the guy's out of it so that you're not like, sink it, Wait, he's still in there.
We all got to have our hobbies. We all got to have something. But wow, that's an extreme hobby right there.
There's this conversation between them when I guess like there's this contact. He goes, I'm going to New York. So this is one of the attempts. I think this is 2016. His giant hamster wheel on the beach behind him. Did you start a bigger? Oh, this is the police officers were approaching him on the beach to try. Did you start on a bigger vessel? The officer asks. He says blankly and says, "Huh? Were you on a bigger vessel or is this all you have?" The officer asks. "This is all I have," he says. He now faces charges of obstruction of boarding and violation of a captain of the port order. I mean, this is all official stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
it reminds me of like pirates. Like, like this is not a world that I'm even familiar with because I've been landlocked most of my entire life. So, like to hear something like you are charged with a violation of the captain of port order. You're like, it sounds super official and like sea captain stuff. But yeah, I mean, he continues to do this. This is a repeat offender, guys, and it's a very expensive hobby that this dude has. And I'm just gonna say, somebody has to. I don't know what's to stop this guy. Let him go.
Yeah, if you let him go, I'm sure he would win a Darwin Award.
And you know what? Prove us wrong. Get to England, okay? I have hope that you will make it. Do you have how many revolutions that hamster wheel has to make?
I cannot even
paddles and buoys and just
I cannot even comprehend that concept. It's just
it makes me think of like if they had a ride. Like you see those people in like the big bubbles, like the bodysuit bubbles and stuff like that. You have those and they'll run out onto like a pond.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, that's safe. That's good. That's all right. You're like, I don't mind if you want to do that. Don't fill it full of water because you'll die. But, you know, but this idea where you can run out on the water and like you're running on water, that's exciting. Everybody wants this. Not in a buoy hamster wheel, guys. Come on. However, I'm intrigued and almost want to try it. Not in the ocean. Not in the ocean. I want to try it like a local pond has a buoy hamster wheel ride that you can pay $5 to get in and do.
That's where he needs to focus his energy. Instead of trying to cross the Atlantic, he just needs to find a local pond and build these and charge rides. There you go. And then he can get his business license and he's all set. You know? Just refocus
Get
that
a business
energy.
license, make it legitimate here, okay? And then you're a lot more responsible with your inventions, and that's quality work. You're contributing to the entertainment value of your local community.
That's
I
right.
like that. Be a good impact.
However, this is Florida, so.
All right. Well, we have definitely reached the end of our show. I could really rag on this whole hamster wheel thing for another quite a few more minutes, but we're not going to. I'm going to let you guys know life is too short, so keep laughing and keep learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.